Good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending on where you're sitting physically on the planet. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Christopher Bishop. I'm a quantum enthusiast for sure, and I'm also the Master of Ceremonies for the Inside Quantum Technology events. I'm a member of the Quantum Economic Development Consortium, and I'm on the Workforce Technology Advisory Committee. Delighted to be invited here to host the launch of the Quantum Strategy Institute, which is a newly formed organization designed to enrich the growing quantum community. So welcome to everyone. Delighted you're here. During today's session, we're going to be exploring the factors that led to the establishment of the Institute, as well as sharing with all of you the ways in which the Institute plans to advance the conversation in the quantum information science space. We'll also be introducing you to the team of experts who've come together to make this happen.
When I think about the origin story of the Quantum Strategy Institute, there's really sort of three driving factors. One was the connection that I have as a consultant to various different companies who were thinking about quantum and how to place it on their roadmap. They were consistently telling me and asking me the kind of questions you would expect around, is it truly hype? You know, what are some of the near-term applications? Should I really be thinking about it? What about my existing conventional computing capability? What's the timing you think that is going to happen around this? So they were asking all those questions.
Right.
The second way was attending various conferences like the ones that you have you've been part of and or hosting, where we would have the people who were in the lab, the people doing the research, the people who were vendors, but a lot less representation on the consumer side. And so, you know, how were they thinking about quantum, and was it truly the technology of the future, or were we going to achieve a quantum winter? Much like we had back in the AI days.
Right.
And the third thing was, of course, around the research for the book, where I was interviewing both people on the producer and the consumer side, and you know, talking to them about the realities of quantum, as well as the quantum physics and mechanics and thought process around implementation. So those are some of the reasons why I started thinking about bringing together a group of experts who could help business understand the technology, which is by no means simple, and give them successful ways to adopt the technology.
So our first panel is going to be focused on vertical use cases, in which industries you think will be most impacted by quantum computing, and based on your areas of expertise. So I know, Amrita, you're in finance and insurance. Joe, your focus is on cybersecurity, and Anahita, insurance. So give us your take. Let's start with Amrita. What do you think?
Hi, everyone, and I'm really excited to be here with such a brilliant minds. So from my perspective, I have quite a bit of experience in the finance and the industrial insurance industrial side of the market. From there, I see, quite sort of an iterative horizon that will appear, like what use cases you'll be able to complete in the next 5 years, what use case will be there in the next 10 years and the next 15 years. And I see that event horizon approaching quite fast, as I think we expecting. Some of the use cases I really see, especially from the healthcare insurance as well as the financial market, is obviously the very first is the portfolio optimization. I mean, the brilliant use case that can market steps in, let's say, next 2 years or 3 years, if we kind of start researching on it. And I see a lot of algorithms from Honeywell CQC, IQ from the hardware perspective, and a lot of algorithms in this space, especially the Monte Carlo simulations that is kind of arriving in the market in this particular space. The second is, which kind of will take little more span, will be your customer, targeting your customer. Okay, what should be the recommended offers or plans, or kind of personalization in terms of customer perspective. We see a lot of data coming into the market with that, a lot of patterns and forecasting available with the AI. But what about increasing data and increasing amount of outliers with those data? How you correlate those data will arise, a real demand for quantum AI in near terms. The third use case, I think, that will be very relevant in this particular industry perspective will be your precision medicine area, which I think will be growing not in certain terms, I would say, but a lot of research is going on with, INQ and Zapata in this particular drug detection and precision medicine
My
area.
take, I believe that the world of cybersecurity and data is going to be extremely affected. And actually, I believe it's one of the reasons the whole hype of quantum really started, because of the security of data coming from Shor's algorithm and Grover's algorithm. And I believe that there is a real danger on encryption today, the classical encryption that we know, whether it's from algorithms that we've already discovered, but also from some algorithm we already have not discovered. So that's something really interesting that I like to do research about. And since we also have the whole industry of cryptocurrency now based on blockchains, there has been a lot of false hype of what will quantum computer do to the world of Bitcoin, to the world of Ethereum, etc. So what will really happen to the blockchain if we move to a virtual money? How can quantum computing put that in danger? But also, I believe that beside the imminent threat of quantum computing on the world of cybersecurity, there's a lot of potential we can benefit from the quantum technologies. One of them is, which has already been used, for example, in mobile devices by ID Quantique and other companies, is using quantum random number generators, which are really giving us true randomness, and which can be very useful when we have a set of passwords that there's nothing related between them. There's no underlying algorithm between them. So we really have true randomness. And as well as the quantum communication protocols, which I've had the privilege of working on when I did my thesis. So the quantum key distribution systems, and which I believe are really to me going to be an imminent transition if we want to have really secure communication protocols.
From an insurance background, I think Amrita covered some great applications that are coming there. One thing that I'm extremely excited about is the potential for quantum computing to help us tackle climate change. And I think that has a very indirect impact on the insurance industry, which is why it makes me excited, but also the world in general. And in terms of the applications out there, we can use quantum computers to simulate catalysts, for example, to streamline processes such as creating fertilizer, which insanely consumes around 3 to 5% of all natural gas. That statistic blew my mind. But being able to use these quantum computers for manufacturing to come up with more efficient materials, whether that be in industrial processes or, for example, for use in electric cars, which would lead to more uptake of them, or for example, traffic flow optimization, or using quantum computing's enhanced machine learning to be able to really spearhead the autonomous vehicle industry. And so there's a range of applications out there which could really be used for sort of the greater good, and particularly in the manufacturing industry, both in terms of actually producing products, but also supply chain management, reducing the amount of distance a Amazon delivery driver has to travel to get all your products to you, or reduce the sort of routes a bus has to take. There's endless opportunities out there that we can use this incredible technology for, and it's exciting. We know that climate change is one of the biggest threats to our planet right now, so I think that is a really a great thing that I'm excited for, and it has impacts on everything, particularly with insurance, as we know we don't want more extreme weather events. So
so just to tease out, I mean, your comment about sort of fertilizer, the amount of resources required, I think the meta message from that is there are solutions we can barely imagine, and based on data that we sort of hardly know. So implications are huge. Is there a killer app that might be adopted across the verticals? I'd like you to speak to your own sort of area of expertise, if you will.
One eminent area that I see in the finance is fraud detection model, that I think could save billions of dollars if actual, mechanism to really detect the fraud in the, claims area can be determined. I think this is gonna be one of the, one of the biggest achievement, I would say. Every year, billions, 20 to 30, I guess, billions of dollars of in the US industry just invested upon uh, in the claims fraudulent area. And every day, I think there are thousands and thousands of claims we are receiving.
I also believe that every application that will relate on entanglement, whether it's for quantum teleportation or quantum dense coding, for example, along with the architectures of QKD, will really be the killer app. And I think that they have been so important that they have really shifted a bit from quantum computing, meaning they are a field of their own now.
Yeah.
And I really believe there's a big future in there. Although there are big advances regarding that matter in China, in the United States, also in Europe. So I'm really expecting that to go forward.
Insurance, I must say, I don't think we have yet come up with a killer app. And the reason I say that is because, to me, killer app is something that without it, you're losing out compared to all of your customers. And many great applications exist, as Amrita said. We've got fraud detection. Potentially, we could be able to simulate weather, as I saw Helen has put in the chat. And all these things are amazing and great and can make your book of business better, but doesn't mean that you can't conduct business without them. But one area I do think we could see a killer app, and we could see it incredibly soon, is within banking, and that could be in trade optimization. So if you're a bank who is able to trade a lot better, then you immediately have a killer app. And if you're not quick to market and you're not quick to invest in that technology, you could see yourself behind. So I think killer application financials industry in general will be around mostly optimization benefits that quantum computing brings about.
Panel number 2, we're going to focus on the challenges of pivoting into quantum. So we want to tease out ways to inspire others to enter the quantum world and thrive with guidance on how to pivot and how to be successful applying quantum in your business. What inspired you to enter the quantum world? What helped you to be successful on that journey?
This is a great question, Chris, really, and I'm thrilled to answer this. And it's actually a question that I get quite often, probably because of my background. The thing is, I have always been fascinated about quantum mechanics. And as an industrial engineer, we didn't get very much into the details. So that curiosity inspired me to learn more and to take courses at different institutions, for example, MIT X-Pro. And I also think a lot about, as an engineer, about how can we find an intersection of these physics properties with something we can actually leverage upon. And this is where computing came into the picture. And it's been pretty much a journey of learning and knowing amazing people along the way.
As opposed to Esperanza, my journey is very different. It's my background is a completely non-technical background, being in marketing and advertising. And actually, I initially started hearing about quantum for the first time from documentaries on a platform called Gaia, addressing primarily the topic of consciousness, but also intersecting it with the quantum field theory. So this was what caught my eye about quantum. And then I started researching to try and understand more, and how does it intersect with our day-to-day world. And it actually started making much more sense when I randomly came across the articles that Esperanza wrote on LinkedIn, explaining.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's why I said it's a brilliant transition, actually.
Mine is almost a blend of both Esperanza's and Mihaela's paths, where, like Esperanza, I started learning about quantum mechanics and I was just hooked. And like Mihaela, I have a very non-traditional background. So as I was looking at how I could move into quantum mechanics while also staying business-oriented, I was very fortunate. I ran across quantum computing and it was a perfect match. So that's what got me into this space. And what really helped me get to the point where I'm at, what I would encourage all of our listeners to do, is think about your really strong personality traits and think about things that you just love doing. And then find ways to leverage those so that you can move into this space. So for me, a couple of key personality traits were networking. I really love getting to know people. So I was very fortunate. I got to join Matt Versaggi and David Radcliffe and taking on a leadership role with the Minnesota Quantum Computing Meetup. And when I offered to them, like, I could help you, and specifically, I can help you with cold calling. I'm comfortable doing that cold outreach and finding speakers to bring in. And I also really love finding ways to get to know people. And with getting to know people, you can figure out how to be of service to them and how to help them. So once you've got that baseline hook, your why, look at your personality strengths and then figure out how to use those to help you get further into the space.
Yeah, and I would even expand on that. Again, this is sort of a personal mantra of mine that, with all due respect, you don't have to be a particle physicist to work in quantum, right? So there's a whole adjacent constellation of skills that are needed to make this technology understandable and adaptable.
It's real about exploring the intersection of quantum computing and change management, and hopefully contributing to businesses and everyone in the community, and particularly leaders or business leaders, to move forward into this realm and making quantum computing a reality.
Very excited about breaking down the barriers for people to understand how quantum can help them in industries that maybe are not yet talked about. And I'm very happy that Amrita mentioned customer targeting algorithms, because marketing has not yet been approached extensively in this field.
Excited to talk with people in this space and get a better understanding of what are their hurdles to picking up quantum computing, because it's extremely complex and it can be hard to navigate, especially, Chris, as you mentioned, if you don't have a traditional science background. So I'm very excited about talking to people and understanding how we can better serve them. And to that end, we have 3 fantastic articles that we just released on our website. The first one is written by Matt. It's about educating quantum workforce for industry, and it covers the strategy, pedagogy, and learnings that he's gone through with Optum.
Great.
And we also have a joint article from Brian and I about how to assess the hype and manage quantum expectations. So really, how do you get started and how do you navigate this field in a strategic way?
Cool.
And then the third article we have is from Joe. And it's about understanding the risk, impact, and threats of quantum computing on cryptography and cybersecurity. So we're going to have more of this content out there. We've already got 3 great pieces that are starting to help build roadmaps that people can follow.
I want to move on now to panel number 3. And the focus is on quantum computing's impact on business. So we're going to have a discussion around how QSI can help the global business community fill in the white space that exists at the intersection of business and quantum technology. Focusing on the people side of quantum and giving back, what aspects of QSI are you most excited about? Brian, let's start with you.
Chris, the list is long, but what I would say is, as I was bringing this team together, I got more and more excited about the potential of funneling all of this great expertise into the mind of the business leader, the people who are making the decisions about quantum technology going forward, and doing it in a way that they can actually understand. So big challenge on the part of my team, but great opportunity for the business community.
I think the lessons that we've learned from watching how AI got adopted throughout the larger enterprise, those are lessons that we can factor in to how quantum in the business space begins to make its foray. And so we can leverage those lessons, and there are a few people than Brian who know more. I mean, he brings a lot to the table in that regard. The second is, we really are dividing up quantum in producer and consumer space. That's huge, and that's a huge revelation, and the industry is just beginning to awaken to that. So the producers, God bless them, we need them, and they need to do their job.
Yeah.
But we don't care about how they make that work per se. The producers, the consumer space is the much larger space. There's a lot of money going to be there. Yeah. And there's no one focusing on how we get people to use that tech to solve problems of note. And so this institute can help that problem. Second is, we really are dividing up quantum in producer and consumer space. That's huge, and that's a huge revelation, and the industry is just beginning to awaken to that. So the producers, God bless them, we need them, and they need to do their job.
Yeah.
But we don't care about how they make that work per se. The producers, the consumer space is the much larger space. There's a lot of money going to be there. Yeah. And there's no one focusing on how we get people to use that tech to solve problems of note. And so this institute can help that problem.
And do you think because they perceive it's too far out or too complex,
Well, here's the thing. If you look at the book Freakonomics, we have historical references on how to solve modern day problems by interrogating some of the past.
Yeah.
So the lessons that we learned from how AI went through that whole trajectory will give us experience we can build on to how to take quantum and move along that same path. So that's just a communication and understanding thing. We've solved that somewhere else. We can do that in this new space.
Just picking up on what Matt was saying about the importance of adoption, and a lot of us have been talking earlier in this call about on-ramps and those kind of those concepts. I think the exciting thing about cloud is that, as we know, first of all, it's this gigantic secular shift in classical computing from on-prem to data centers. And the big win there is that it gives enterprises a huge amount of flexibility in terms of how do they approach computing and pilots and experimentation and so on. And I think cloud with quantum does exactly the same thing. It gives businesses this really easy on-ramp into the world of quantum. They no longer have to build a gigantic refrigeration unit and then quantum computer in the middle of that. Suddenly all they have to do is sign on and register and start coding and start experimenting with that. I think the related exciting thing about cloud is that it gives, as hybrid solutions emerge in this sort of NISQ era, where we have to use both classical and quantum simultaneously in iterative fashions, having everything up in the cloud makes that much easier, right? Instead of having to, host and directly wire in classical computers into quantum, they're sort of in the same virtual private cloud in a manner of speaking. So it's a really effective way of kind of bringing everything together and making it all smoothly integrate.
Someone had said, well, is quantum computing only for big companies or rich people or whatever? But to your point, I mean, it is sort of, I don't know if egalitarian is the right qualifier, but you can, to your point, like log in, and a lot of organizations now offer free time, right? I mean, for research, you can run an algorithm and try to solve your problem and learn and come back and do it again. So.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, 95% of what you're going to do in quantum, until you get into very serious operational applications, is going to be really on quantum simulators. And they're effectively free once you're actually paying for the cloud service itself. So yeah, there's literally no bar to starting to get involved in it and starting to experiment, apart from the pure mental learning of it.
Yes. Question number 2. So experts say that commercialization is a major problem in quantum. And why do you think that is, and how can that be addressed? Brian, what's your take on that?
Well, so Ian talked about one of the examples here about the barriers. Are there truly barriers to start up? If you're thinking about, people on your team getting a quiz kit course and at a IBM Access and starting to play with the technology and creating algorithms, maybe that barrier isn't so large. On the flip side, do you actually have the resources inside your team to adequately inform your decisions around quantum? The other question I quite often get is, Brian, I've invested millions of dollars in my traditional conventional computing capability. Are you asking me to do a wholesale shift here into a brand new technology? And of course, the answer is no. There are lots of companies who are using a hybrid capability that will allow them to use conventional and quantum. So there's a number of these sort of barriers that business leaders need to understand. And the other objection I get is also from CTOs who have a huge portfolio of activity going on inside their business. And now we're saying, Brian, you're asking me to start thinking about a whole new piece of technology for which we may not have funding. My answer to them is, even if you don't spend $1 in 2021, start thinking about it on your roadmap.
There's a few. I think there's an awareness or understanding problem. Most of the CTOs out there they think that quantum is a CapEx problem. It's a capital expenditure, and it's not. It's an OpEx problem because it's always going to be in the cloud. That shrinks the actual financial investment into this space significantly because you only use the time you need. The second is material science. So the material science will hold subatomic particles long enough to do, and with the correct fidelity to do information processing is fairly immature. And as that matures, we'll see all of these things move forward. Now, the good part about that is there's a massive geopolitical conflict going on from parties who remain unnamed, but that that will spur the physicists to get in there and solve that problem. And the interesting thing that we've observed is all of the other parts of quantum are massing at the border. Like all of the other aspects to push this thing through are sitting at the border waiting for this little problem, very thorny physics problem, to get solved. Because of this massive geopolitical conflict, it's likely to be solved in our lifetime. And then all of these things that are standing at the ready on that border are going to come crushing through. And that's the event horizon we see. So that I think you should keep your eye on that too.
White space to fill at the intersection of business and quantum technology. And it wouldn't be fair if we didn't give members of this esteemed group a chance to sort of weigh in on how the Institute is going to address those challenges and fill in that white space. So Matt, what's your take? Share a little bit of insight into what's on the horizon, how the Institute plans to close that gap.
So we have, when you first do this at scale for a Fortune 5 company, you have the opportunity to look at what the phenomena you've observed going through this process, like anybody who cuts through the woods and blazes a new trail. And there's things we've observed, like the producer versus consumer divide. We've observed a technical versus a technical education versus an executive education, which mirrors the same experience we had in the AI space of how we push that adoption through. Those things cascade over very cleanly. The concept paths to adoption at the executive level is another thing. You'll see that in the paper that we've had. Those are things that we're observing. There's a phenomenon that we bumped into that we're reporting out. And so we'll engage in many of these things as we grow and then report back to the community, go, hey, look, here's what I found by doing it.
To start by a quick anecdote. This morning I had coffee at a Starbucks and sat next to a young man who was developing software within his company. And he said it was better than any other software application that was available on the market, that had better features and benefits, but he couldn't get any traction. And so, quantum will have some of those same sort of challenges where it may actually be the better solution, but the people making the decisions don't understand. They aren't starting with the business problem that needs to be achieved or needs to be solved. They're starting with the features and benefits of a software program. So what's really critical for us is to help people shape that, conversation with executives or decision makers around what business problem you're trying to solve, whether this technology is appropriate for that business problem, and then if it is, what are the steps to getting there? So, it's that sort of, simple as a 3-step process, but much more complex when you actually get down to it. But that's what the QSI is trying to achieve, better understanding so that you can actually, achieve this and increase the adoption of the technology over time.
Nell is saying he'd like to understand better what the perception is about current abstraction levels on top of QC in order to project a business problem easier to a QC hardware. Having to be too technical. So Matthew, your thumbs up. What do you think?
I'm raising my thumb because that's the hardest problem. That's the dirty little secret of quantum computing, is take problems in the wild and map them to algorithms that we know how to solve. In particularly because quantum computing is a whole lot more like assembler programming than it is Java or Python or something like that. So, and no one does that well. All of the folks we've had a chance from AWS all the way through to D-Wave, none of those folks, D-Wave's probably a little better, so I'll give them lots of credit there, know how to take those problems in the wild that they found and map them to circuits in an algorithmic way to actually solve that problem. That's the dirty little secret. That's the hardest thing. There's the billion-dollar idea if you figure that out. And that's a function of the maturity.
How will the QSI engage with the community? What's the general sort of meta message around how this conversation is going to continue? What's your vision for how that'll work?
Well, what you are doing today is you're really helping us to start launching the Quantum Strategy Institute. Where we start with from our team is very much sort of that think tank approach where we're starting to create the research. We're starting to do deep dives. And that's what we'll start off with in 2021. We're not a community that looks like a meetup group, Quantum London. Our expectation is not really sort of an event mechanism, but we are very much interested in staying involved in the community through our many sort of social media opportunities through LinkedIn and Twitter and our website. And certainly over time, we will be looking to reach out to the community for their advice and expertise and involvement in research. As we go forward through 2022, Matt, for example, will be leading up our education pillar, and we'll be looking to fill in some of the white space gaps around education at the intersection of quantum and business. Fortunately, we have Danika Hannon as part of our team, who will be leading up the International Quantum Strategist Day. So we're developing a format for an international day sometime in 2022 where we can connect with the community and talk about those various aspects of the intersection. And so there are a number of ways that we can connect, and certainly our team with people like Mihaela and Danika taking the lead of reaching out to the community and staying connected.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been a pleasure hosting and moderating. I hope you found this experience valuable. We're delighted that you're joining the conversation, and we look forward to taking it further in future events as well as on social media. In the meantime, I invite you to, again, as Brian said, connect with team members on LinkedIn, follow the Quantum Strategy Institute on Twitter and Medium, check out the website, the URL is in the chat. You can find everyone's link. There's also an amazing board of directors, which is now posted on the website. I would reach for all of those people as well. Finally, we encourage you just to reach out. If you're a business executive curious about how you can integrate quantum computing into your roadmap, or maybe you're a quantum vendor or industry expert wanting to know more about how to approach a research topic or commercialize an existing process, please reach out to the Institute. So thank you all for joining, and have a great day.